Okay, welcome everybody to the October meeting and those people online. Couple of any new members today? If you're new, if you're really new, if you want to stand up and just say who you are and where you're from, and that would be great. Cheers.
Anyhow, Ralph Jackson, Honeybook, Beekeeper, from 3 Hive for 11 and 1 year, and I need a lot of help.
Awesome. Awesome. Welcome.
I'm Monica McDowell. I live in Malvern. I've been a beekeeper for 3 months. And I have 1 hive because I know how y'all work. Everyone's like, me too. And then you have 4, and then you have 8. So I'm very successful so far. and I'm busting at the seams. And so it's been a real joy. I'm kind of the jerk that gets on the computer online and you can see me and then you can't see me because I'm not techno. So if they're like, hi Monica, and I can't get there, but I'm working on it.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Anybody else new? No? Excellent. So the agenda just going to go over the agenda really quick today. For the first hour, we're splitting the meeting up into 3 sections. For the first hour, we're going to do sort of CCBA business, and then we're going to do, Paul's going to lead a panel discussion on winterizing. And then the second hour is the breakout groups. So Keith's going to do advanced, though I forgot to tell you that. Sorry about that, but I figured you're good. Russ is going to do beginners. Mark is going to do candle making, wax things with wax. And Daryl and Don Coates, are they either one of them here yet? No, they're going to do microscopy. So we have the microscope set up over here. I'm not sure what they're going to be sharing, but that's the second hour. And the third hour is show and tell and questions. So, and then the raffle's the third hour. So I think what we're going to do for the raffle today is I think we're just going to have people come up during the breakout sessions. Is just take a raffle ticket, keep one, put the other in this, whatever, put it in this, I guess. Oh, you got a little container? We'll put it in the container and then we'll do the raffle. So that's the agenda for today. So a couple of... Yes. So if you want to check out the raffle prizes. What's up with the CCBA? Obviously, you've all heard about the AFB outbreak in Coatesville. Jeff Eckel was nice enough last night to be on Chat for the first hour and answer a lot of questions. For those of you, it's important just to look at your hives. If you're within 2.5 miles of Stottsville Inn, you need to sort of contact Jeff. I think I've said that multiple times. It's just important. So Jeff says you won't be in trouble, but he needs to come out and look at your hive. So just as an update on that. As far as the treasurer's report, Jack's not here today. Jack wanted me to let you know we are up to 718 active members, 582 primary, 126 associates. So we have 718 active members, which is a big number, which means for the next meeting, which is the November meeting, which is our annual elections for the board, we have to have 10% of the membership either present or online. Otherwise, we can't have the election. So you'll hear more about this. It always somehow we get 10%, but the bigger the number is, the more people we need to get out for elections. And you can only vote once, Keith. So.
Is that 10% of primary members?
I don't know. Jack would know. There is going to be, usually in November we have constitutional amendments. There's one constitutional amendment that, as of today, which will be that the president does not need to be on the board. So in the past, we've had that the president of the club needs to be one of the 7 board members. That's been in the Constitution. And we felt like that was a bit limiting to people that may want to be president. So we've kind of dropped that. We kind of changed that. So now all the officers of the club, the president, the vice president, the treasurer, the secretary, are all selected by the board. But none of those members have to be on the board. So everybody has the opportunity to serve in one of those officer positions. So that will come up. You'll see the formal you'll see the formal write-up of that. Everyone will get an email of the amendment sometime in the next week, so you can read it, and then there'll be a vote on that at the November election, at the November meeting, which will be the election. We're currently thinking about having the November meeting outside instead of inside, so stay tuned for that. So I don't think it's that cold in November, and I think more people probably still comfortable.
It has snowed in October.
In October? Well, you look like you'll be okay. He's a tough guy. No, but we may be out here in the cold. I don't know. Well, let's do a quick show of hands. How many people think the November meeting should be the second Saturday outside? Okay, and how many people think it should be inside on the Thursday? Okay, so we have kind of, it looks like outside may be winning on that one. So, what? 2-1. So we may do the November meeting outside the second Saturday, but you'll hear more about that. The November meeting is the Board of Director elections. We have 2 seats up for election this year. Merle Stone and Tina. I always say Tina's last name wrong. Mekinc. I don't know how to say it, but they're both not going to be up for. They're both going to step away from being on the board. So we have 2 seats up for election, and that's open to any primary active members. Currently, as of today, we have 3 CCBA members who have said they are interested, that they're running for the board. The first is Ed. Ed, raise your hand. Everyone knows Ed Sharp back there. He is one, thankfully. Has Marcy Beavers. Marcy here today? No, Marcy is also running for the board. And Tim Ferris. Tim said he's coming. Anyone see Tim? No. Tim Ferris is the third person running for the board. If anybody has interest, all you have to be is a primary member and be interested in serving in that sort of role to create vision. And so if you're interested, please let Kathy Lopez know. She's the secretary, and we want to make sure that we get your bio in the November newsletter. So it's very important. I'm so grateful that we have 3 people. It's always a little bit of a hold your breath. Are we going to get anybody who's interested in doing that? So hopefully there'll be more. A couple other issues. Kathy Lopez, who's our secretary, is looking for people to do a helicopter. CCBA is going to have a booth at this helicopter museum October 23rd and 24th, and that's somewhere near Westchester, I think. You can sell honey there, so if you have honey to sell and you want to sell honey and also talk a little bit about bees, let Kathy know. You'll see an email coming out about that, because we still have, unfortunately, I don't think we have anyone to volunteer for that. You want to let Kathy?
That's the earthwork. I'll be there.
John. I think it's a Saturday and Sunday, I believe, So I don't know exactly. Kathy would be the one who would know the hours and the details, but anyway, so thank you all who volunteered for the Unionville Fair. I think Jack said we had that all covered, so that was great. As of a couple of more bee-related things now.
By the way, 2 online people voted for outside.
Okay. and everybody's vote counts, even, so it's all good. What else on my list to talk about? Unfortunately, this year we may not have fondant for sale. That's a big one, right? So, our current supplier of fondant has no fondant out in Honeybrook area. So a new member out in Honeybrook, maybe you have some influence with goods or something like that. They said that they may have out of date fondant or second fondant. So we're looking into that, but they have no 90-10 good fondant right now, and they don't think they're going to have it in November. So, in the past, we've ordered 6,000 pounds of fondant for the club members. So right now, it doesn't look like we're going to have that. Now, some of you have bought second fondant from them, right? In the past, Keith?
It's fermented.
Fermented. Is that a good or a bad thing for the bees? Bad.
Heating spring, but not winter.
So maybe distressed or second or out of date fondant.
Distressed is the word.
Yeah. So
Is it fermented all the way through? On the outside of the cheese?
What's happened is separated slightly, so it's water in there. The water is fermented. I wouldn't risk it on winter.
so with that said, it should be fine if you if you have extra from last year and you froze it. That'll be fine.
You haven't frozen.
Yeah, it's 100% sugar. It's not going to spoil.
Yeah. Just to let people know, like if you were planning on using fondant as your winter emergency feed, we may not have it.
Candy ball.
Yes, so the candy boards are going to be made. We're going to be doing candy boards again the Saturday before Thanksgiving at my place. So more details to come out on that, you know. So we'll have candy board making. Another big one coming up. 2022 conference, next year's conference. I don't know how to say next year's conference, which will be in March, usually the second Saturday in March, and we plan on having a conference next year. The details of that still need to be worked out as far as what kind of conference that will be, but we need a conference chair and co-leads. This is very important because there's a like Keith and Paul and Justin. There's a few people that do a considerable amount of work to make the conference happen every year. But we do need a lead and a co-lead to keep it organized and to keep the jobs on time. Right? Right.
I've done it twice. That's enough.
It is one of those jobs that is probably a job that you do for a year or two and then sort of, you know, kind of graduate from and then sort of help out. I mean, Keith and Paul and Justin still do it, and anybody else, I know there's other people, still do a tremendous amount of work to support it, but we do need a lead and a co-lead. If we don't have a lead and a co-lead, what do we do?
Coerce people.
Coalesce people. Pay them.
Coerce.
Coerce people.
Translation.
So what does that job entail? Usually the work in that starts soon, right? So usually the work in that starts in December. It's pretty much and Janie and Mike and Deb, who were the people that did it last year, have, you know, there's a roadmap on how to do it. You know, there's a.
They're not prepared to do it again.
They're not prepared to do it again.
Have you twisted their arm?
Not very hard because that's not my style, but you know. Yeah, so I all three of them have said that they would like to step away from it. And Janie's done it 2 years, and Mike and Deb have done it a year. So, I mean, that's usually how long we can twist somebody's arm for is 2 years. But there is so what does it entail? It entails, there's usually a committee, usually about 5 to 10 people that work on it. It's basically sort of getting the speakers lined up, getting advertisements lined up, getting just the organization of it. So it's sort of making sure that the jobs stay on track and on time.
Project management.
What? Project management, yes.
Has it been established whether it could be another online conference or in person?
I don't think it's been 100% established yet. I'll tell you, you know, being transparent, my vote would be to be a virtual conference again. Just because I think, you know, the amount of speakers we can recruit and is greater. I've been tossing around this idea of a skills day. Some of you have heard this idea of doing a conference and also doing a skills day where we have a Saturday, maybe in May, where we have groups of 10 people. It's like a station thing where you kind of move from station to station and learn different skills related to keeping bees or whatever the skills are that we have. So that would be an event potentially that we would be in person, and we'd also potentially invite vendors too. So there would be a big tent and all the vendors would be there and you could buy equipment. That's a lot of work, I know, and we've never done it before, but I do like the idea of getting people together and having something like that, but I'm not 100% sure. This is personally that the conference I think the conference is better virtually.
As far as speakers go, as far as vendors go, they were really short-shifted last year.
Right. No, I agree.
So we need a in-person vendors day.
Yeah, we need
so we
something
can do
for
hands-on
for
training.
vendors. Yeah.
One, a couple of lessons we learned from that was if the vendors have a discount they want to offer, it's not to the club in general. You have to go to the vendor breakout room to get the discount. And that will help people, that will help the vendors talk to people and drive their traffic and make it more usable for them. So it's got to be a two-way street, especially, yeah, it's got to be two ways.
But I think that's going to be one of the first. Obviously, that needs to be decided, Ed, about virtual or in person, and I think it'll be a decision probably made in November after the board sort of elections, and then we'll sort of get the board together to discuss what they think, and board and the officers together to discuss what they think is best. I'm willing. Anybody have other thoughts on virtual or in person while we're on the topic?
Somebody suggested having people, having people in the seminar go, and then have vendors there, and have the speakers on the screen.
There's a hybrid approach.
Hybrid.
It just needs you present everything at the environment.
Right.
People still go there. But
Right.
It can be either online or in person.
Right. So the speakers are the same way as we did last year, but instead of sitting in your living room, you'd be sitting in a lecture hall.
And then you can talk to somebody about what you just heard.
Sure.
And in normal education, we do have that answer.
So I guess still to be determined, I guess we'd say. But we're definitely planning on doing a conference in March. I don't think there's any doubt of that. And there's no doubt that we need a lead and a co-lead. Because without it, I don't see it. I don't know what would happen. It would, I don't know.
Did Carol ask that question? Did she vote for
Herself to be lead of the conference?
great minds?
You must have an interest, Carol. Talk to me after the meeting. No. Yeah, it's work. I'm not going to lie. It's a bunch of work and a lot of project coordination, but it's important. Okay. What else is on my list? Volunteers for virtual. We do a lot, as you can see, we do a lot of this virtual stuff. Right now, it's 3 guys doing it. It's basically Mark and Rick are there, and Chris. And we'd like to get at least 1 or 2 or 3 more people willing to help out with that piece of things. So if you have an interest in whatever they do, running cameras, pushing a button to, let them know, because it'd be nice to have a little bit less pressure on them to do it all. So I sent out an email. I'm sure most of you did not read it, but that's okay, about looking for teenagers, right? If you guys have teens that are looking to build their college application a little bit with volunteering with the club and are interested in this kind of stuff, that would be great too. So if anybody has teens that, I'm sure if you went home and asked all your teens if you want to come to a B meeting, the overwhelming would be response, no, Dad, no, Mom. But you have to, sometimes a little bit of service goes a long way. So anyway, if we can get any help for these guys, I think they'd appreciate it, right? Yes, sir. Please. Hiroshi had an idea that he wanted me to share. So back to the flood, we lost, probably 70% of the hives at the apiary. So there's probably like 4 hives and 10 nukes that are still alive. A portion of those hives lost their queen. So they lost their queen and requeened, and they're very small right now, obviously, because they were without any brood for a month. So especially the nukes. So Hiroshi's idea was to have people like adopt the nuke for the winter. So basically, you take a nuke home and you baby it, and you feed it, and you wrap it, and you hug it, and somehow you make that nuke survive, and then you bring it back in the spring. Yeah, I said that's kind of a cool idea, right? I mean, like, if anybody is interested in, because I didn't really, if anybody's interested in doing something like that, let me know, and or you'll see an email out soon about that too. Maybe we'll just create a day in the morning, some afternoon or evening where people can come and pick up the nukes and take them home. Unfortunately, I didn't. Thank you for those that volunteered to feed. So they've been being fed. So they've been being fed on a twice-a-week basis since the flood, which is great. And they've all been treated, but the populations on some of them are low because of the not being queen right for a month. They all have queens now. They all have laying queens now, but some of them are small. Hiroshi thinks that those things can survive the winter if they're sort of wrapped and fed and stuff like that. So if you're so interested in taking a nuke home, it's like take a nuke home with you, and it's like when your kid's in kindergarten, they bring home the guinea pig or something like that. But I told Hiroshi I would share the idea. I'm all for it. So if you're interested, let me know at some point, and we'll get you a nuke. But it's got to come back. And you know what? If it doesn't live, I don't think it's going to live. But that's okay. What else? I think that is all that's on my list from a business standpoint. Oh, I see Tim. Tim, is that Tim back there? I don't have my glasses on. Yes, Tim? No, Tim? Tim, I asked Tim to talk a little bit about gamma radiation for a moment or two, given the AFB outbreak. Can you do that for a second now, Tim?
Good morning, everyone. Think of it as an extra tool in your toolbox for beekeeping. There's a list on our website at extractandbox.com if you go to For the Beekeeper, and it'll give you all the recent published articles about gamma radiation. So AFB spores can be killed off at 10 gamma rays, and then the certificate that we get out of Salem, New Jersey comes back at 16 as the last round. So you can go through that list and it'll work out what diseases that it deactivates the spores at. AFB, if it transfers through this area, could keep going right the way through the county and extend on. At the moment it's isolated out towards Coatesville. However, it has potential to spread. Okay? So the easiest way it spreads is actually from beekeeper to beekeeper, with transfer of old equipment, or in your own operation with not sterilizing your hive tools or wearing disposable gloves. To give you an idea of AFB, I had testing done in New Zealand about 7 years ago. It can transfer on bee venom, because we manufacture bee venom down there. So it's highly contagious once you've got it. The spore count can be active in your hives before it's visualized. So it actually requires a very high spore count before you'll get the ropey test, which is the first stage of seeing it. So not to scare anyone, but if you're buying old equipment from someone, the cost of getting it gamma radiated is about $5 a deep. So if you've got old frames that are drawn out where you're trying to get a season ahead with that wax, it's a very cheap option for sterilizing as a safeguard. We do a group gathering where we stack it up, the boxes come in wrapped, then it all goes through down to Salem, New Jersey. It takes about 10 days and it's $5 a deep, so it's based on volume. Any questions?
So we usually hold an auction, right? So we've been holding auctions for many years, and basically you're shaking your head, Keith. No auction?
I guess you do the...
Right. So this is where this is going. So we've held an auction pretty much every year for years. So people getting out of beekeeping, I collect the stuff. It sits up in my barn, and then we have a spring auction, and people get incredible deals on used equipment. We're currently thinking, because of this and because we've probably done it before, we may want to take all that equipment that comes to auction and irradiate it before we auction it. That's being considered. Of course, there would be an expense to that, and we'd have to figure out how we would cover the expense of that. But anyway, just to let people know, because surely we don't want to be sort of, contributing to a potential problem. Yes?
Can the wax dipping kill this or not?
Yes, it can. So you can actually entomb the spores by using in the boxes by doing it that way, but it's more the residue and the wax on the frames that you have to worry about. So those spores can last anywhere up to 50 to 70 years in your equipment.
80 years.
Yeah, they keep extending it. Any other questions?
So I think, it's definitely, you guys do that in the spring?
We do. So this year it was a little bit later because the spring was like it was a long winter, right? So it gave people more time to get around. I think we had 12 pellets go down last year. I usually send 2 pellets a year myself. It's just one of those volume things. If we get more than 7, it becomes quite cost efficient. But our company will do it anyway, just because for us it's a useful tool. The other consideration is catching swarms in the area. So feral colonies can also transfer AFB, right? So if you're catching swarms in the coastal area, I would recommend not doing it this year coming through. And let's get a year under the belt for that area and see if there's any further transfer. So far it's only on a single colony, but that was purchased into the yard this year. So the other thing to do is if you're buying in colonies, get a copy of the certificate of inspection. Make sure you're actually buying gear that's been inspected. Okay, just double safeguard yourself. Once you've got AFB, it's actually hard to get it out of your operation. Yes?
Do the CCBA colonies have inspection certificates on them? I'm thinking about the nukes that Hiroshi's mentioned, maybe sitting over the winter. I'm concerned about the traffic in and out of Chester County, representing Delaware. Our state figures take some extra step in restricting movement of feedstock and equipment. Once there's an outbreak, I'm not aware of the Pennsylvania Beekeepers
Yeah, so
regulations, but are there any restrictions now for movement in and out of Chester County?
not at the county itself. The individual apiary yard is restricted. So the owner of the property can't transfer. He's got 2 yards, so he can't transfer gear between the 2. Nothing can go in or out. The club's yard is inspected in the spring. However, I would be concerned about European foulbrood with the amount of rain that we've had. That is actually treatable, so you can actually treat that. You can requeen, but you get a lot of the other associated diseases like snot brood can happen at the same time once. We've got a nutritional imbalance in the area. So Coatesville, for example, they had, depending on the site and the measurement, has had anywhere between 9 and 12 inches of rain over that 1 month. So that nutrition deficit is also will have an EFB potential outbreak. Usually you only see it in the spring when there's lots of water, but we've got the different environmental circumstances at the moment.
Yeah, so we shouldn't be moving these hives out of Chester County into, obviously,
Yeah,
Delaware.
so even if you're going to Delaware, you need an interstate
Right.
permit to get it across the state line.
Yeah, just to follow up, that was a problem last year with the timber routine.
Yeah.
When stock is not expected, that's a violation.
Yeah, no,
Like, it's actually not hard to get an interstate permit. So once you actually have Jeff come out and he inspects your yards, it's just asking for that request of paperwork. So you've actually met the process of doing it. You just need to get that paperwork through. And with it, when you take the hives over a state line, basically you have to apply, say going down to Delaware to Emily White, who's a state apiarist there, and you basically fill out a document where the hives are going to go so they can track it. It's all about tracking with beekeeping.
Yeah, and the problem has been getting the paperwork executed out of the state. So that you have to have that with you when you transport bees. And that's been a problem.
Yeah, so the other thing now is the spotted lanternfly certificate too. You should be looking at having one of those if you're transferring out. So we're inside the quarantine zone, but if you're going to go down to Delaware, which is on the edge of the border for the spotted lanternfly, you want a certificate there too. Okay. Any other questions? We're all good. Okay,
Great.
so just to wrap it up, watch buying second-hand equipment, especially if it's been sitting around for a very long time. Sometimes it might be generational equipment where the parent used to beekeep, and the person selling it's got no idea of the history of it. look for, when you're getting equipment, if the cells are really quite small and you've got entombed cells on there, that gear is not efficient to put in the beehive anyway. If you want to buy new this coming year, either Keith or myself, we usually buy pallet loads of plastic frames in from Perico, and they're extremely cheap. I think they're about $1.60 a frame. So you don't always have to buy second-hand gear to get up and going. Okay? I can be reached on email. My personal is ferristj@hotmail.com, or you can send me a text, 484-678-8569. Justin?
This program is available to members of the Guild and also.
It's available, yeah. So we actually have guys out of New York. We cover about 5 states. So this is actually the only program in the country that's currently working with gamma radiation. So it was originally set up in Montgomery County. Mark Antunes, I think, set it up originally. So he's kind of retired from it from last year. I've been running with the program for about 4 or 5 years. I like it. I use it. I consider it just as an extra tool in the toolbox. So
Is the video still up on the CCBA website, available to the public, just to reference, how you prep the box?
yes, it is. So if you go to the Montgomery website, they've got an irradiation link that you can go to, and then they also have a link to our website. Karen Rockaseca, who's the state APRS for PA, she will have a letter go out from us. At the same time, the Pennsylvania State Beekeeping Association has a link you can read up on there. So it's also a fascinating read if you're just into research. So we've listed every publication of what's there at the moment with gamma radiation.
And are you still doing anything with any type of source, any amount of box has to be fully trash bagged, taped up?
Trash bagged and taped up, because I don't want to have known transfer coming into my yard too, right? So I don't want to have that disease. No one really wants to have that disease. So we like it to come in sealed. It's either depending on your volume, whether it's a full pallet or if it's in a single individual box. It just needs to be wrapped tight, and that's then is compliant with Karen Rockaseca with the state APRS with transfer of diseases.
So regardless of what's in the frame or what's in the box,
Everything's got to be wrapped. Yeah. Okay. So if it's coming in individually wrapped, all we do is put it on the pallet with the rest of the stuff. It's marked with your name on it, and then we take it down to New Jersey. It takes about a week. Comes back. We give you a call when it's ready, and you come and pick it up. Okay. It's pretty straightforward. Hey guys, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Tim. It's going to be, we'll have two presentations. Ed's going to show you how to take care of plastic hives. I'm going to talk about how I prepare my hives for winterization. So this is what it's going to look like, the bottom board, screened bottom board. I really like ventilation. And this is just a spacer, but I'm going to simulate this being a slatted rack. I like slatted racks. Slatted rack is just a framework of slats, and there's half the space that is just, this is a slatted rack. So the bees just get an extra inch of space to hang out, and the slatted rack just goes, well, this is an 8 frame, that's all right. This is what it looks like. If it was a 10 frame, it just gives the bees a little place to hang out above the landing board, and it's a gap of air that lifts the hives a little bit off of the ground, or if you have it on cinder blocks. I have my hives all on cinder blocks. So anyway, a slatted rack, and then I like to put a super of honey down on the bottom. So a super of honey down on the bottom, and they're building it right now because I'm feeding with sugar syrup, and I have a super on the top, so they'll fill that up. And in November, I'll probably slip this down there, put that on the bottom. So the bees will start, and they can distribute it. They'll start eating down here, and they'll gradually come up in the winter. So now I have 2 deeps. I like drilling 3/4 inch holes in my deeps, again for ventilation. I think it really helps with certainly bee access. My bees don't use the bottom landing board for entrance to the hive. They're always going in these holes because it's closer to the frames. It's closer to the business of where they're going to store things. So I like these, and I think it's good for insulation as well. The next we'll have the inner cover, and I'm going to turn it upside down. So this will be regular. There's my 2 slats for feeding with a notch. So we'll turn this upside down. And then I'll have a spacer. So the spacer, I just made this myself. It's got a deep side and a shallow side. So again, it's got a notch. So I'll put this on with the deep side up because I'm going to put in my wool for moisture absorption. So I've got a wool blanket or my famous hunting socks. And we'll put them in.
You wash those first, right?
Those poor bees.
So that will absorb all the moisture. And if I want, I can put fondant here and feed the bees in the winter. But I'll always check these socks and change them out. The last is a foam board. So this is just a 1/2 inch blue foam board. That's for insulation. And I didn't bring an outer cover, but we'll simulate that this is an outer cover. So then the outer cover goes on the top. So you got plenty of ventilation, and down below it's totally open because we have a screened bottom board. Now if you want, you can, and if it gets really cold in the winter, you can take your sticky board, and I like to make a little trap door out of it for ventilation. So this will prevent cold breezes from whooshing up underneath the hive by putting the sticky board there. And the little trap door is good because it'll allow some ventilation. So air will still circulate through the hive. Because a lot of people say that's not the cold that kills bees, it's condensation that kills bees. And if it gets too wet in there and cold in the winter, then they're not going to do well. So the last thing I'll do is put tar paper on. So I've cut this out. I made a piece in the back so I can slide the sticky board in and out. And I've got extra flaps on the side because, like I said, my hives are on cinder blocks. So these extra flaps will hang down, and that'll prevent winds from swirling up into the hive as well. So for the, I bring the tar paper just up to the top deep. So I can still remove the outer cover, remove the insulation, remove the whole shim feeding setup if I need to, without moving the tar paper. So we'll just set the tar paper there and staple it.
Do the bees get angry when you stay?
Did they get what?
Angry.
When I staple? Yeah. That's one of the few times I put on my bee suit. All right, there we go. So I have my little holes.
Mouse guard.
So I got to move this. Oh yeah, I forgot the mouse guard. Yeah, I knew there was something I forgot. Thank you, Keith, for reminding me. So it's important to have a mouse guard. You should put them on now. And the mouse guard, the best ones I've seen are stainless steel plates with holes drilled in them, small holes. A mouse can get through. Do we have some?
Yeah, don't worry.
Oh, okay. So the some of the hardware cloth that you can buy is actually too big. A mouse can get through something that's small as a 1/2 inch. So a mouse guard is important. There you go. So this is the best kind to get. And a simple screw just holds it in place. Oh, I wasn't paying attention. My bottom board is upside down. All right. Any questions on how I prepare my hives for winter?
Yeah, Paul, do you ever use any foam around the sides?
No, I haven't. I mean, my philosophy is the bees are living in hollow trees, and they're not really well insulated. There's a lot of air coming in. So I just like the tar paper for a wind barrier. It's just a wind barrier, not so much insulation. And I think if you insulate too much on the side, it may keep them too warm, and there'll be too much humidity inside the hive. So maybe side insulation works well if you have a lot of ventilation, but you have to have the ventilation. So I don't even always put a sticky board in the bottom, unless it's, like getting really, really cold. So I just have open bottoms. I am experimenting with one nuke that I have that does not have an open bottom. It's got a solid bottom, so we'll see how that does this year. Interestingly, they have gummed up their top opening, and I don't know why. Maybe they like the dark.
Did you say you open screen bottom boards with your nuke?
Did I what?
On your nuke, you open screen bottom boards with your nuke?
Yes.
With a flattened rack on the nuke or no?
No.
And then,
Now, the nukes are just sitting there on cinder blocks and then on bricks, open bottom, but I do have the tar paper flaps that came down below it. So that's, the idea there is to prevent the swirling winds from getting underneath the hive.
and what's your nuke configuration for winter? 5/5 and medium or just 5/5?
5/5. Yeah, double deep. Oh, and with the nukes, I actually take another empty nuke, put that on top over a piece of plywood with a hole in it. So it's like an inner cover, but it's just a piece of plywood with an oval hole cut in it for feeding. So I can feed if I want to through that empty one. And I throw my socks and wool blankets in there too as a moisture control. So double deep and then an empty box on the top. That's how I do it. I get 100% survival. Yeah, but
Okay, so I did the each foam on the side. Maybe too hot for them?
Pete says no. I'll listen to him. And now we have another way of doing it. Ed's going to talk about how to treat a plastic hive.
Okay. Mine's going to be a bit different than Paul's. Everybody's got their thing. Everybody does their bees are bees, but I almost exclusively run the polystyrene hives. I do have one wooden hive, George. Inch and a half, high density polystyrene, styrofoam. It's a beer cooler, a little denser. They have screen bottom boards with a pull-out tray. This is the entrance. It's a standard comb style entrance. It can be flipped over for transportation or whatever. I leave it like that all year, just like that. Don't touch it. My winter configuration, and my last pull was in June, late June. The spring honey is when I do my extraction. Anything after that, I'll leave a super on, and if they fill it, they fill it. If not, I pull it. I typically, by the beginning of August, I push all my bees down into a single. Let them finish whatever they can find, whatever they can scavenge, Slurpees, flowers, whatever. I'm looking to get at least 6 frames worth of stores in here. 4 frames of brood, 3 on 3, 4 on 2, whatever. I'd like to get about 50 to 60 pounds of nectar in it, or honey in here. So unless in August it is still a huge hive and I see a flow coming, I'll leave this on. Otherwise, I'll pull the excluder and push them down into a single. Now, here. For my inner cover, I use the feeder. The bees typically propolize this all up. There is ventilation up here, which lasts for about 3 weeks, and then it's propolized up. So that's my inner cover. 10 frames. I like to have like six frames of honey, 4 frames of brood, and inner cover. My outer cover, part of their system, same thing, 1.5 inch polystyrene. It's got ventilation holes in the back. They can be either solid plugs or they can be the vented plugs. I typically, in the winter, I'll pop out all, when I say in the winter, around December when I do my mite treatment, I'll pop out all the vents, put the solids in, latch it, and then I see them in February or March.
What's your winter survival?
Last year, I lost 3,
Every year.
say 20%. I'm sorry, I lost 20%.
You lost 20%.
Yeah.
And last year, 3 others?
3 out of 12. 1 was starvation. That was in a wooden hive. The other 2 were most likely mites. They didn't starve. I did lose 1 from starvation. I lost 2 from mites. I didn't get on top of them early enough. My fault. But as far as the starvation goes, I've only lost 1 because of starvation. I do keep the bottom tray in. I keep the bottom tray in all year. Even in the summer, winter, fall, whatever, the bottom tray stays in. I use this for diagnostics. I can see where the cappings are. Excuse me. See what's going on inside the hive. When I put empty frames in, you can see the little wax flakes where they drop their wax flakes accidentally. So you'll be able to see where they're building the frames out. Clean it off, put it back in. So that's my standard all-year configuration. Now I'm running 20 of these 10-frame systems and a handful of 6-frame. Their nukes are 6-frame, and it works well for me. I'll be honest, I'm kind of lazy when it comes to like feeding and what have you. I typically don't feed. If I have to feed, the feeder's there. If I don't, it's still there. And that's my configuration. I don't use upper ventilation.
So how wet does it get inside there?
I never actually went inside. I don't fit very well, but
You gotta remember, that's way more insulated than.
yeah, I've never lost one because of moisture or anything like that.
So you won't get condensation like you would in a normal hive.
I would imagine.
You shouldn't, because it's insulated, so your inside should stay nice and warm. And you shouldn't get as much condensation like you would inside a 3/4 inch piece of wood that gets cold air comes through and
Sure.
condensate on the wall and the ceiling.
Sure. Now, one disadvantage.
Article in American Bee Journal this month about that issue about upper ventilation versus no upper ventilation, and the author said if you have enough top insulation and side insulation, then you don't have to worry about having an upper ventilation hole.
Now-
Now, I know that goes against some of the practices that
Sure.
we know kind of are effective, but that was the author's point.
Now, one of the disadvantages to running the thick insulation hives, in the spring, when you're talking to other beekeepers with wooden hives, their bees are flying and having a good time. You get these rogue 50-degree days in December or July, and their bees go out and do their. Bees do not. They don't. I'm not sure how the bees recognize.
That's one of the serious negative impacts of a lot of the research is the fact that they're very slow to build up the spring.
Well,
Full insulation, they're already.
I don't know about that because by March, because I'm running single deeps. If I'm running 2 deeps, I don't know. I've never done it. But the single deeps, yeah, by March, I'm at least 6 frames of brood in there. I'm starting to get nervous about swarm. That's when I start thinking about Demarest. Is March, April, a bit earlier than a double deep would. But like I said, but you are correct. There was back in Europe, they used to run a second larger box.
WBC.
Okay, it's basically a second hive bodies that fit around, and you got a 3 or 4 inch air gap there. And those hives were actually, it was detrimental to the hive because they didn't know when spring was actually happening.
And they didn't perform well.
That is correct. I haven't had any issues with that. I have read the research on that, but I haven't had that issue with here. Now those rogue gays that is warm, these don't fly. But that's a beautiful thing about the IPM board. You can still monitor what's going on inside without having to be all creepy about it and poking in there when you shouldn't be. And then with the IPM board, sometimes I'll take my phone, take cameras up underneath through the screen.
And just to clarify the top entrance, the British use the WBC hive, which is an insulation hive. They moved away from it to a single, just because of these problems. And also what they did is they put a top ventilation in. The latest ones have the top entrance to alleviate some of the problems. So this has come full circle, and that's
Sure.
invented 150 years ago. So
See now,
it goes cycles and cycles and cycles.
there was a time when I would leave one of these with a ventilation hole and just close all the other ones up. The bees were propolizing the feeder anyway, so I wasn't actually getting the ventilation. All I was doing was allowing the cold water or cold air to lay on top of that feeder. So closing up all eight of these ventilation holes eliminates the cold air just laying in that pool of where the feeder is.
Would you get cold air up there? It's convection, the hot air would rise. Wouldn't it push the air out and you have convection flow?
And that is true, but like I'm saying, they seal up the feeder.
Oh,
So I'm not getting air past.
it's not coming up.
That is correct.
Oh.
So leaving that extra insulation or extra hole, all it was doing was allow air to lay in the trough of that feeder.
I got you.
When I would pull these off, this area here, you could feel, if you put your hand on it, you could feel the bees' heat.
Right.
But once you took it off, your hands were freezing.
Right, so your insulation lid really was doing.
Exactly. So my solution last year, I quit leaving the one out, and I put all the styrofoam plugs in.
So let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
So you're talking about them not flying like the rest of the bees that are in wooden boxes, correct? So when you see the bees in the wooden boxes flying, pull your ventilation hole so you get convection, so it's not flying.
That may be true, but I don't micromanage.
I'm just saying, that it would sense that it's springtime outside, and maybe that would kickstart it sooner.
Probably,
Thought.
but like I say, I don't want to. I am a lazy beekeeper. Yeah. When they start flying is when I start getting excited.
Right.
Yeah, I don't force them to do weird shit or anything or stuff. Like I say, this is my standard winter configuration, and come spring, I start flipping into the Demeray. I'll put my mediums back on a deep, pull brood out of here, throw it up in the deep, and then that'll buy me a month or so before I have to really start worrying about anything crazy. I do want to give a shout out to Better Bee. Better Bee sells these. I got an email from Paul. He actually emailed me earlier in the week, but it went to my spam folder. So Wednesday I read it, and I didn't have any extra equipment. So I called Better Bee and told them for the CCBA, I need this by Saturday. They jumped on it, had it in the mail. It was in my house on Thursday.
What's the cost of those compared to a wooden box?
I actually kept my receipt here. This shipped is $140. It's $123
For the whole thing?
for this kit. For everything here, including the feeder. Now it's $20 shipping. Now you can get 2 of these shipped for that same $20.
Okay.
So this particular setup was $149. So I guess it was $130. Which I did keep the receipt. Yeah, no bees, no frames, no nothing.
No medium.
Yeah, damn.
I mean, I'm asking, is that?
What would that price of the medium?
Yes, that was with a medium. This is no medium just because I ordered a medium with this whole setup. I didn't feel like painting it on Thursday. So I just grabbed a medium from the shed.
But that's a license, is it not?
That is.
But this is a license.
This is a Lyson kit. There is a bunch of Better Bee catalogs here. It is a Lyson kit. They get their, Better Bee has a little deal with them. They get their little, their plug-in on it. They come unassembled. You know, it's 12 screws, 12 screws. These are screwed down. You don't have to screw them down. I do, just because I do. And that's it. That's how I winterize these. And what's that? I do paint these.
What do you paint them with?
Just outdoor semi-gloss. I use a sprayer. High gravity sprayer.
What kind of wear do you get on your corners when you're frying the boxes up for the styrofoam?
Yeah, this box here is probably 3 years old, and it's very minimal. When they glue these together, the actual amount of propolis they get in here isn't much, and they pop right off. Yeah, once you get this, the whole thing just pops right off. The queen excluder one is probably the worst as far as propolize, but it's easier because with the 3/16 or quarter-inch gap from the queen excluder, you actually get your Hive tool against the queen excluder in the box. You're not actually prying on the corner of the box. So as far as propolizing goes, yeah, these always just pop right off. Again, this box here is probably 3 years old, and there's maybe a little bit here in the corner.
See any degradation from sunlight at all?
Excuse me?
Any degradation from sunlight?
No, that's why they do require you to paint them. But as far as, they are styrofoam. If a mice decides he wants to chew on them, he's going to chew on them. If carpenter ants want to get in there, they're going to chew on it. I don't know if these are what you would call forever Hive. I may not be able to hand this down to my grandkids or anything like that. But if I get 120 pounds of honey off of it every year, it's paid for itself.
Could you paint the inside?
What's that?
Could you paint the inside?
Me? No.
No, could you?
I would imagine.
Question.
My point is,
Repeat the question. Repeat the question.
Oh, could you paint the inside?
yeah, I need to stop them from chewing it. Because they won't chew.
No, the bees don't chew it.
Oh, what does?
I'm talking, I'm just explaining. I'm sure the questions are running through people's minds. How durable are they? Do the mice chew them? Do the ants chew them? Yes, they are styrofoam. Now, I do get a little bit of chewing. Usually, right in this area, they'll chew down, the bees will. Just 1 or 2 spots here. And I don't know why they do it.
They do that to your reducers.
That,
The wooden reducers, they'll chew the wood.
yeah, they do that right. Like I say, it's only one little spot about an inch wide that they'll do it on. And I think it's, not all my hives do it, but most of them do. It's not super deep, but it does happen. That's the only damage that the bees have caused. Yes, Keith?
I run 5 of these with 5 wooden ones,
Yes.
and I noticed no real difference.
Okay.
So it's not a major thing. So I'm always looking at how they react and what the honey harvest and the speed. There's not much difference.
And that may be true. That may be true.
I run a top entrance in winter.
Okay.
So
And again, the reason I was asked wasn't to sell beehives here today, but it was just to show you how I winterize my bees. Starvation is never an issue for these. If I don't treat it for mites will be an issue. Again, the one hive I did lose was a wooden hive from starvation.
And the hive itself, is it lighter than a wooden hive?
Oh yeah. Like I said, I mean, this is a yeah.
yeah, they're not as durable, and woodpeckers like them. So for woodpeckers, what's going on?
Just what I worry about at night.
Yeah.
Just when you guys get nicely.
Before we go, thanks Ed. Before we go to a breakout, we have Natural Lands here. David and Tim, you guys want to come over? Natural Lands is obviously owns this property and also the property that we keep our apiary on. So it's very kind of them to do that. And they wanted to say a word or two about Natural Lands today. 3 minutes, sir.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is David DeVille. I'm a volunteer with Natural Lands, and On behalf of Natural Lands, I'd just like to say welcome and thank you to our beautiful property here at Cheslin. I see you have refreshments lined up, so I'm not going to keep you from those for very long at all, other than for those of you that are not familiar with us. As our name suggests, what we're really all about is preserving land, and our mission is to preserve land for nature, to care for nature, and in doing that, we work with multiple organizations in the region to share best practices and to provide surveys and ecological advice to other organizations in the region. So we are involved in far more things than actually have our name and our brand on them. And the third part of our mission is to connect people to nature. And that's something that's really developed over the last 15 years, a decade or so. We are really making a push to engage people with the natural world around them, with the fabulous resources that are available in southeast Pennsylvania. Because at the end of the day, people only care about what they understand, and our long-term protection of these preserves really the foundation of that is not legalese, it's public support and goodwill. So we try very hard to be good neighbors wherever we go, and to offer this resource to the community. So Tim and I are here. We're doing an outreach. We're also doing it for the general public, but if you care to wander over to our table during the break or any other time, we'd be very happy to chat to you. But with that, I'll wrap up.
Beekeepers are cheap. Ain't giving away anything over there?
We do have our magazine. We have pens, magazines, everything. If you've been here last night, there would have been beer. That I'm afraid was not free. But yeah, we do have some giveaways, some pens. Our preserves are always free to visit. There's never an admission fee to enter our properties. A significant source of our income is, of course, annual memberships. For the low price of $45, you can become an annual member, get invitations to special events, including ones where beer shows up. But there's a whole variety, from concerts to hikes, to children's events, etc. There's quite a range of activities that are available for you.
And I'm sure the club members know we made a $2,000 donation on behalf of the CCBA to the Natural Lands Trust this year to further their work. So, we've been working together for many years with Natural Lands, and we thought that would be a good way to sort of, give our appreciation to them this year. So.
Well, I'd certainly like to say a very public thank you for that. I'm a volunteer, so I don't
you don't benefit from that.
I don't see the money. But thank you. Your mission and our mission are very closely aligned, and we're really just delighted to have you and to be a host for these meetings.
Excellent, thank you, David. So we're gonna go to breakout now. So,
Okay, guys. What we're going to go. This year is different for me. So this year, once I've started, I think in end of August, September, October, I always put out pollen substitute. So for the last how many years I put pollen substitute. I normally put it in a little container and I leave it there, and the bees never touch it. But this year, they have gone crazy. As soon as I put it out, they are hitting it, which means that there is a pollen shortage. Previously, we haven't had this. This year, and I think you've been to some of my sites and you've seen the bees are, they normally put it out and nothing. The bees look at it and say, I don't want that, I've got natural stuff. But this year, all apiary sites, I put it out and I'm replenishing it. So in other words, they're finishing it. So they're really going after the substitute pollen. So something is different this year. Also, we're in a major dearth in my area over here. Major dearth. There is no, there's no nectar coming in. Paul, Paul. Good evening. Anyway, so the feeding stage. So what I'm doing as well is I'm doing my fourth and final round of feeding. But because the dearth is bad, I'm continuing with little amounts. So after the fourth feed, they've got enough food. I've got a nuke yard with 20 nukes. They have not saved the last feed. So if I go into those nukes and I look, they've finished the feed. But if I look on the frames, because I always put a blank frame next to the feeder, a foundation frame. So just foundation. And what they do is they draw it out a little bit, and then they eat that. So then it goes away. So which means that there's a dearth, so they're using that feed. So those people who are not feeding may be jeopardizing the health of their colonies. So at the moment, I think really imperative that people feed just to make sure that your bees are healthy. If we look at feral colonies at the moment, they've got virtually no honey, like nothing. So they haven't stocked up sufficiently, but it's all regionally based. You'll find sometimes, you go a little bit further out, there might be more nectar. But almost all of I've got 12 apiary sites, all of my ones, which are probably on about this level, round about where we are, heading all the way down towards Newtown Square, almost on a line. And there is a genuine dearth. So just so that you guys are aware, just check your hives, make sure you've got enough feed. And it's very easy to put pollen substitute out. I take a pail, just a 5-gallon pail, an old honey one and I drill 4 big holes at the bottom, and I put a container inside there, fill it full of the substitute, hang it on a tree, on a branch. It's very easy to do, and just leave it. If the bees take the pollen, that's fine. If they don't, it's there. But it's an indication that they're getting extra nutrition from it. So, and then I've got one of those big commercial, on my nuke yard, I've got a big commercial those blue feeders. You throw it in and they go crazy. So now this year it's been different. So I've noticed a huge amount of uptake there. The pollen substitute, I'm using the Man Lake one. So you get the big bag. If you want some, then just come with me sometime and I can give you a Ziploc bag full.
Can you use pollen patties?
Yeah. The problem with the pollen patties, you see, when you're using external feeders, now I don't do external feeders for sugar water, but I use it for the pollen substitute. If you put it in the hive might not need it. So you're putting it in, and also it attracts beetles and so on. So the beetles might go in. So if you're using the pollen patty, it's always a good idea to freeze the pollen patty once a week and then put it back in the hive, just so you don't get the beetle larvae going crazy there. So it's, but otherwise we can go through Paul's demo over here and just have a look and see how this differs from what mine is. So if we have a look at this, okay, first of all, I am totally against putting socks and anything inside the top. If you use a blanket or something, I feel you don't need that. Okay, it's just something that I don't do this at the top. All you need, now this is ½ inch. What I do is I use 1 inch. A little bit more insulation, 1 inch. And this year I might even make myself a couple of 2-inch ones. Okay, just to be fancy. Now, maybe it lasts a little bit longer. But I use the foil-backed ones. The foil-backed ones were ones I used, but if you get a little nick in there, the bees are quickly into that and they chew away at it, and eventually there's not much left. So what I'm going to do this year is I'm going to use tape, just ordinary packing tape, and I'm going to take my 1-inch ones and I'm going to put tape all the way along. Because I want to use these the whole year round. I mean, I leave them in the hive in summertime. So if it's a really hot day, they've got insulation from the heat of the sun, and in winter you've got the insulation the heat retains. And I think from the winterizing, one of the most important things is that top insulation. So I always experiment with my hives, but I'm not going to experiment with taking this off the hive. That's one thing, I think it's so good, I just naturally do it. And it's so inexpensive. You go into Home Depot or Lowe's, you sit on the floor, use all their tools, chop it up into little 16-inch by 20-inch, and that's what you need. And then you wrap it up, and I tape the edges because they love eating it, and yeah, then you pay for it, and it's almost nothing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go more this type than the foil back. So that's one thing I'm going to do this year. Okay, so I don't use the fume board, or not the fume board, some people use straw, leaves, and so on. I don't do any of that. So all I do is I might even add something like this, but all I do is I put that on top. And that's good enough. I mean, I don't have moisture build-up, or you've got a vent at the top. Now the latest trend here is to experiment with leaving the top vent out. You close the top vent. Okay? I'm not going to risk that as well. I don't want to experiment with that. My bees all survive, and I have a top vent. So I'm not going to experiment with taking a top vent out. I mean, this was done, as we said, the WBC hive, which was there's a hive like this with an insulation layer all the way around it. And they solved this, I think 50 years ago, that it was useless because they didn't have a top entrance. As soon as they put the top entrance in, it became functional, it became useful. And that's in the English, but it also might be related to moisture. They do have a tremendous moisture problem over there. Okay, so on these over here, I've got a lot of clients to look after. I take the effort to put wax, not wax, this roofing paper on. So the tar paper, I put it on almost every hive that I can. And it's a lot of work. I've got to go and cut it out and so on. But I think it's worth the effort. Okay, so you put this tar paper on, I think it's a really good idea. I do mine slightly differently. What I do is I leave mine, I lift them up a little bit, and then what I do is I cut, and then I fold it like a parcel. So I fold the whole top, so it has a dual purpose. It keeps any external moisture that might come in. It keeps that external moisture. So this is sealed, and then I cut into a hole over here for the top entrance. And the bees always come up, they're always really nice and healthy once they come through the winter. So I like it. One of the major reasons is solar gain. If you look on those really, really cold days that you have in the middle of winter, this over here, the sun's out and shining, and I think that's quite important. If we look at the Canadians, what are the Canadians doing if they have to overwinter? What they're doing is they are seriously wrapping with insulation wrap. Okay, so they are going one step further. And they've done a lot of experiments on whether to do insulation or not to do insulation. And they opt, because of the colder temperatures, they opt to do insulation or wrapping. So it is a benefit. So if you want to go a step further, you can then insulate this. But the bottom line is, it doesn't make that much of a difference in our area. And as you all know, that when the cluster forms, when the cluster in the hive is in a position like that, the bees are heating the cluster, they're not heating the hive. And one of the most important things with overwintering is what they did in the 1950s. You can go back and read these. They wanted to test the survivability of these hives. So they took these and they put them in a freezer to work out when the bees die. And what is the ratio of how much honey they need for what the temperature was. So these are all very, very well collated, nice studies. Then they even went in and said, okay, let's put it in the freezer and let's take, so they cut the whole and they put hardware cut all the way around. And then they rolled it into the freezer, and they did exactly the same as if it was wood. There's virtually no difference. So you could overwinter your hive with open mesh that you could see the bees inside. Okay. What is the trick though? What did they find? And I mean, this is old research, and it's still valid today. What they then did is said, okay, let's simulate a little bit of a realistic world. What is it like outside? So they went and put a fan in there, put the fan on, As soon as they put a fan on, the hives were very quick to die. Okay. Which leads us as beekeepers, practical beekeepers, what do we need to do? Wind protection. So before you think anything else, wind protection. Okay. So put a fence around the outside and put something there that the wind doesn't come and hit the hives. And we've seen this numerous times. If you make a mistake, you're next to a hard wall area, and then you have a hive that's just off the hard wall, so it gets maybe accelerated wind. That hive has a negative impact in the winter. You'll notice that on the cluster size gradually, the bees exfoliate, the other bees die, then the cluster gets smaller and smaller. And what is particularly susceptible is obviously nuke boxes, which are smaller clusters. So remember, wind protection is probably way more important than thinking, how thick the wall should be. Should we have that thick, or even a mesh? If you have wind protection, you could probably put maybe a 1 millimeter, like a tiny 1/8 of an inch wall. It doesn't matter. So the bees keep the cluster warm. Okay, the other thing that we had, do we need a slatted rack?
I don't, that depends on the arrow that you get.
No. I don't think we need a slatted rack at all. Do we need the soup on the bottom?
Pretty well for them.
No, don't need it. Not going to make that much of a difference. I do it, but it's just so that it saves me storing that soup in mine. So mine look almost the same as what Paul's one is here. Also these holes, I don't put those holes in there. The hole that I have on the candy board. Do we need candy at the top? Do we need fondant? No, I'm also anti-fondant. I think people use, often the people that use fondant are maybe too lazy to feed them during this time. They sort of, I've forgotten to feed. They don't have enough weight, just as security. I'm too lazy to open the hive. Let me just put candles. It's really easy to do that compared to the feeding and getting feeders and so on. So I think fondant is largely just an emergency. Can the bee survive on fondant alone? But you're running more of a risk. Sometimes you'll have the cluster in the lower section, and your fondants at the upper one, and they can starve down there before finding a fondant. So fondant is a little risky, but they do take it, and you can survive a colony with no resources with the fondant in there. Now, as you all know, we're not getting fondant this year, so maybe a candy board. Is a candy board good? Yeah, candy board's really good, but it's again, it has a dual purpose. It absorbs the moisture, and the bees can then work on that, and they can get extra feed from the candy that you make. The other thing that you can do in the candy board is you can add protein to it, which means that on the survival in the springtime, they've got a little bit of extra protein. Because sometimes in spring, they will forage in, maybe even February, they're foraging, getting pollen, and they start brood. And then you'll have 2 weeks of really bad weather, cold weather, where they cannot get out. And that protein that they have in there could help them over that period. I use soy. Yeah, if I make it, I do put it in there. If I'm doing 2 candy boards, I will have one as a winter candy board and one as a spring. So the spring one will have. And the rule with this, when do we put one of these in? Why would we use this? It depends on the wind. If you've got a lot of wind in your apiary site, I would definitely use these. Put it in the bottom so it prevents the wind going up. And if it's very well protected, I don't care. I might not even wrap. Some of the sites I have with a huge bamboo screen behind there, in the middle of a windy winter day, you can stand there and it's very protected. So that, it all depends on the circumstances. Some hives do well. But the wind influence, at George's farm, we put nukes on the side of his house in a very, very windy area. And those nukes took a huge hit from the wind, from that cold. And as soon as he put them into a different location, the behavior was completely different. So, you can put very nice windbreaks. So a lot of my sites I put windbreaks. The next experiment that I did last year on, I think I had 6 nukes on the site, is I went in and said, okay, let me wrap it with cling film. Okay. So what I did is I took each nuke. My nukes are 3 deeps. 3 deeps tall. And what I did is an insulation board on top. So what I did is wrap them around with one of those packing wrappers. Okay? And then I wrapped it this way around. But I didn't wrap around the entrance, the top. Okay. And I posted this on Facebook, and everyone said, your bees are going to die. As people normally will say, and people with no experience will say, your bees are going to die, nothing's going to survive. And did they survive? Yes, they all did very well. They came through really, really big. The problem is all my nukes survived, all the other 24 survived. They were all really big and very nice, so there wasn't a very good clear cut. Did it really help? Did it not really help? If they'd all died, then I know don't use that cling film again. Yeah. So a lot of my experimentation, they survive. And I think a lot of what we do, I think wrapping and putting these things in, it makes a little bit of difference, but not a major difference. So if we look at the 2 key factors in overwintering, and I think this is mentioned 100 times, we mention this all the time, is, first of all, what I would do is make sure that they have enough feed. Okay, number 1, make sure they've got food. That's the number 1 killer, because if you make a mistake with feed, they're guaranteed to die. You'll have 100% death if they do not have enough food to maintain the heat inside the colony. Okay. The second one is your varroa. If your varroa counts are very high, your virus counts are very high, your bees are not healthy, they will dwindle faster. They're not that healthy. Therefore, secondly, make sure that your varroa counts are low, that the bees are nice, they're healthy, and so on. Those are the 2 basics. So often if you cover those 2 basic things, you can just leave your bees. They will survive. Get the varroa, get the feed. Then the other ones are nuances. Okay, I will not try and experiment with not putting this insulation. All mine will have insulation. Okay, top insulation. I think that's, for me, that is absolutely vital. I will not take that off. So 3 things. Number 1, they've got food. Number 2, that you've got healthy bees. So you don't have some strange diseases or mites or whatever is inside. And thirdly, top insulation. The rest is all nice to have. Another thing that I do that's maybe a little bit different is I make sure that I feed all the way from August to even as long as I can feed. So I'm feeding now. It's a lot of work. And often what you do is, a lot of the beekeepers, they try and skimp. They look for the easiest way out. Now what can I do that's absolutely easy? I would rather go is, what is the best for the bees? I might be making mistakes. I might be making mistakes. How often do you feed? I'm feeding once a week. Okay, but depends on the feeders. Most of my feeders are those trough feeders, the ones over there, on the bigger hives, and they will take 3 to 4 gallons on a feed. So once a week, or it probably ends up once every 1.5 weeks. I'll go through a cycle called all April sites.
I got the same thing, 2 gallons in each one.
2 gallons on each side. Yeah, after 3 days it's gone. Now, what is the benefit with that? People say, oh, and you look at the lazy beekeepers. Lazy beekeepers say, I didn't harvest the honey. They didn't even keep the honey here. Okay. And they've got enough feed. Okay. I do the opposite approach. I will harvest that honey purely that I can go in and do the stimulative feeding. The stimulative feeding will go in and they will create more bees. They will create bees that are young bees that are able to survive the winter. Because any egg that is laid now, that'll be hatching at the end of October. That's a young bee. That's the one that's going to be foraging in March and April. Those are the key ones. If you're not feeding, the queen shuts off. I'm in a dearth period. The queen's gone. So it means I've got old bees now trying to survive the winter. And that's one of the little nuances that we do. You know, what are the things? The other one that's important now, and Yesterday I was stuck in an apiary site. I've got 6 more hives at that apiary site. In fact, it's probably 2 miles that way, 2-3 miles that way. And I've got 6 hives to finish. In other words, 6 more. I'm going to take the queenie excluder out. My queenie excluder is in this position. And I've then got to make sure, what I do is, this treatment over here, I'm actually really happy that I did the Amatraz, the AFB treatment now. Because with the dearth over here, I want this long acting, because my bees might be robbing somebody else's. My bees are big and they're strong and they're healthy. You know, you fed, they're powerful. You're pollen feeding them, and but what I want to do is I take the queen excluder out and I reactivate the Amatraz. So in other words, those strips that you put in there, after 21 days or 24 days, you take the strip out, you put your hive tool on it, and you pull all the propolis and wax off it, you switch it over, and you pull it again. You reactivate that. Now there's a nice bit of research on that even though the Amatraz, which we now know is the most effective in my treatment, we don't like using it because it's Amatraz. But remember, after reading those instructions and everything, it seems that you can eat this stuff. So it's, and I know many a dog that has eaten a flea collar. The flea collar is, or used to be Amatraz. So what I do is reactivate those Amatraz once, just by scraping the wax off and pulling it. So you're getting a redose, re-energizes it, and it puts it in. So then I remove that after, 54 days is it? The maximum, 40 something to 50, whatever days. So I remove all of those strips, which for me is 2 weeks' time or 3 weeks' time. I remove those, and that is it. So make sure the bees are healthy. And the bees now are robbing my hives. If you've got a weak colony somewhere and you spill some sugar water and you're within a mile or 2 miles of my apiary sites, mine are going to get your varroa. So if I've got the Amatraz strips in there, the Apivar in there, I'm at least protected from bringing the mites back from your area. Okay. Okay, from the wintering, what else do we look at from the wintering side? What other nuances? Anyone else have any ideas? Yeah.
Can we go back to feeding?
Yeah.
I've got 2 hives and I'm feeding about a gallon apiece because I have things sort of tough feeders.
Yeah.
Every other day.
Yeah.
And they're just sucking through that stuff.
Are they storing it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One hive, yeah, they're building out into supers.
Yeah.
Just keep feeding as long as they'll take it.
So what I will do is I will have a slow feed. If I had smaller number of hives, I would want to do slow feeding. Yeah, something like a mason jar with little holes in there. And I'd feed once every 2 days if they were in my backyard. And I had the time to do it. I'd want a slow feed. I want to keep their queen laying. I want the queen stimulated, so I would do a slow feed. Unfortunately, I'm rushing around like a headless chicken from apiary site to apiary site to apiary site. So I've got to use the big one, and I get there and I lift this and I pour loads of sugar water down there. At the moment, they have enough in the hives. So I fill maybe half of that, or maybe I give them a quarter of what fits in there. I put it on one side. So I'm not feeding hugely, but I want to keep them, I want the queen laying. Because also what happens, if I inspect other people's hives, the ones that leave, okay, this is the hive, leave it, no feeding, no nothing, they've got enough stores. In March, if I go look at their hives, they've got cluster sizes like this. Okay. If I look at my cluster size, they are huge, which means I have so many options in March. I have options, which means I can go in and say, let me split this 3 ways. Okay, so I can make and sell news. I can go in and say, this is going to produce April honey. I harvest in April because I've started. This is my preparation. In August was my preparation for next year. So instead of feeding, and I never feed in spring because of the contamination. If I feed sugar water in spring, that could then enter into my honey. I don't want sugar water in my honey. I want that to be pure, absolute, genuine honey. So no feeding, but I do my now. So this is preparation for what happens next year. So they come out really big, powerful, healthy, And the one treatment that we still need to do is the dribble, oxalic acid dribble. One of the most important things that we do in December, we dribble, and that seems to clear out a lot of the varroa. So just something, and switch the treatments. So this year I did oxalic acid, 6 treatments, oxalic acid vapor. Okay. Then I did the horrible one I don't like using, but it's the most effective, that's the Amatrans Apivar. And then I do dribble, the oxalic acid dribble that we've done for 14 years now, every year. And the bees, and my bees survive. I mean, I work full time, and I have, I think at the moment I have 106 hives, and just to manage that is painful, like it really is. It's too much work. Anyone want to buy any hives? So I'm actually very tempted to like not treat them and just see how it works. It's less work for me next. Yeah, so that's what it is, and it's all the work that we do now as to the success that we'll have next year. And I've been fairly lucky in the fact that I haven't lost a nucleus hive over winter for 4 years now. Sorry, John.
So you have screen bottom boards?
I have screen bottom boards.
And you leave them open?
The screen bottom board, I would leave it open if I have good wind protection.
Okay.
Okay. If the wind can gust around, and then I close them up. And I have all of these, I have a whole range of these.
Okay.
So what I do is then just slot them in. But sometimes you'll find that some animals will come and chew the corners, and they want to get at the detritus that's come down. So, some little sugar granules and so on. But sometimes they disappear. You'll find them against the fence. They blow out for some reason. I think the animals tug at them. We put game cameras out there, and we know now that it's raccoons and skunk are the ones. So we've actually caught them in the act of pulling those boards out. So, but then I have fence around this. I always see them lying at the one side of the fence. So we see exciting things in the beehive. One of the most amazing things that has happened is when we go to the site, we'll find that the deer seem to like the beehives. So you see the deer they've slept right near the beehive, so they're like curled up and they sleep to one side. And you think, why did they choose the beehive? Why didn't they choose over there? But it looks a little better for us for a deer to sleep there. But they seem to like the environment where the bees are. So that's even jumping over fences to go sit next to the bees. So I find that quite cute. That's quite nice. The synergy between them. John.
Another question. I always feel as though we leave too many boxes or so. I mean, we haven't lost the hive in the wintertime for a long time.
Yeah.
It just seems crazy to try to insulate them and
How many boxes do you take through a winter?
normally, we're all mediums now, but in the past it would be 2 deeps and 2 to 3 supers.
Oh, you leave the supers on?
Yeah.
Okay. But remember, it doesn't make that much difference because they're eating the custard. So wherever they are, they will be eating the custard. So you will have much higher. You'll hear everyone talking about, there's too much space because the bees have to heat that space. No, that's not true because they heat the custard, not the space. But I find they seem to do better if they're fairly close to an insulation board. So as soon as you're fairly close to an insulation board, they don't do that well if they custard further down there. So I think the ideal would be 2 deeps or the equivalent of 2 deeps. Yes, so
Plus the honey super up the bottom.
I do that, but the bees are never there. They are probably over here at the moment because I've just removed the queen excluder, so they will gradually move up into it. So they've never really been there. So that's like a buffer, or a windbreak, a slatted rag type of thing. But I see no detriment. Sometimes they leave 3 deeps on. They all seem to do well. But again, I've got the same problem as John is I don't have a benchmark. my bees survive. Okay, they don't die. So whether I try this styrofoam or I try this, they survive. It doesn't seem to make a difference. So the important thing is just keep the bees healthy, make sure they've got enough feed, and they will survive. I think if you left them out in the open and just ignored them, I think they would still survive if you get the two basic things working. A lot of the other pieces are nuances. And if the colony is big, like really nice and big, they tend to have a better chance of surviving. So,
Did you ever put a medium on top as well?
the problem with the medium on the top is the fact the queen will go there in spring. The queen always tends to gravitate up. And you don't want the queen in the medium or in the super, the honey super, in springtime. Because then, yeah, you've got to shake her down, and it's just a bit of a hassle. So that's why we prefer to put them there. Then in the springtime, what you'll do is you'll look at that medium on the bottom, and if there's any honey in those, normally there's no honey. Normally they clear that out, it's gone. So it's beautiful and dry, so it's ready to be placed above a queen excluder to get honey the next. So what we will do there is, if there is honey, there are two options with the honey. So if I've got a honey-bound medium, I keep it separate. Number one, I extract it, okay, and that can be fed back to the bees. Pretty easy to feed honey back to the bees. You can do, or what you could feed it in the top feeder as well, which I found out now that it works. But also what I tend to do is I will mark them. And what they're used for is drone culling. So what I do is I put it in, there's a deep, position number 3 or position number 7. What I do is remove the deep and I put a medium in. Then they will drone comb underneath, and then as soon as that's capped, I scrape it off. And then that gets fed to the chickens or to whoever wants it. So that's the Varroa treatment, making sure that everything, that the Varroa is attracted to the drone comb rather than the worker comb. So although it's extra effort for the bees, yeah, it's good. Anything else?
Super. With honey, some honey. Did you put 2 supers underneath on the bottom?
No. Generally, if there's some honey in there, generally what they do is they move the honey to where they need it. So normally the end of it has been empty. So this, if you put honey down there, by the next season it's gone.
Well, I guess my question is, I'm going to start to consolidate the hives.
Yeah.
So we did an extraction, fall one, and we have 2 supers that have honey.
Yeah.
So if you don't have enough room for all the frames, what do you do with the extra frames of honey? 4 minutes.
Okay, 4 minutes, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you've got 2 supers over here.
Right, right now I have 2 supers up top. They're supposed to have some honey in them.
Yeah.
And not all the frames can fit in one box and put on the bottom.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So what do you do with the other ones? Yeah, you store that in your garage, so your car can't get in your garage. So so what I do is I'd extract that honey, and what I
feed it.
and I'd feed sugar water to the bees. Okay, the old basic thing: do the bees survive better with sugar water honey or honey? Which is better for them on a really cold winter? Sugar water honey, as long as it's pure cane sugar or pure beet sugar. What's the difference between beet sugar and cane sugar? Nothing. Okay, what's the difference? High fructose corn syrup, and cane sugar, which is better? Cane sugar is better. Okay. Yeah. So, and what type of honey is better for the bees? A lighter honey or darker honey for wintering? A lighter honey is always better. So, darker honey generally contains more impurities, and the bees have got to go to the restroom more frequently. Okay. So that is why. Do they do well on lanternfly honey? No. It might be a very good idea to extract all lanternfly honeydew before winter, and then refeed that. So Did anyone get lanternfly?
Sorry, you're saying, I'm confused about, if you're extracting the honey, if you have too much honey going into now,
Yeah.
or whatever, sugar water,
Yeah.
you extract it.
You can extract it. I'm not extracting now. I finished
Okay,
it.
so you just, do you freeze those frames then?
Okay, so if you have frames extra, yeah, you can freeze the frames and then take them out. But wax moth and beetles are on the downhill now, so you generally not get reinfested now. And honey supers, if there's no brood dark comb in there, what happens is you generally don't get wax moth, so you can store them. So it's the dark comb that the wax moth really wants. So often you can take honey that's, honey super, honeycomb, the clear comb, the nice yellow comb. That the wax moth don't want that. There's not enough nutrients in there.
So you could store it and then use it again in the spring?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You can come look at my garage here.
You don't have to extract it then?
No, you don't have to. No, you don't have to extract. No, it's not compulsory to extract. Yeah. You can store it as honey. You can give it back to the bees at the beginning of next season and put it at the bottom so they can extract it. They can use it. So it's.
Once you use Aprivar, then you don't want to use that honey for.
That's right. Yeah. So if you're using Aprivar, so there's a big cross. If you use Amitraz, that honey is out of bounds. Okay. So this is if you've used other treatments, and I think oxalic acid is fairly safe with honey from all of the research. And the other honey safe ones are the Microwave Quick Strips and the Formic Pro. Those ones are relatively safe with honey. Any other questions? Nothing. Not even one. So now we've confused you.
Oxalic acid vapor rather than the dribble that goes through the whole hive. That's more effective.
If you're doing that in December, if it's colder, the dribble is more effective. Because the bees are in a cluster and the vapor does not get onto the bees. But if you're over 40 degrees, maybe 32 outside, but it'll be warmer inside. If they're separated, then vapor and dribble are about the same. But it's so easy to do a dribble, I would do a dribble. There's no brainer, just do a
You have to
dribble.
open up the whole hive to dribble all the way down.
Yeah, so you just open it up. But it's better to work in pairs. So one person lifts and then the other one dribbles. So if you stuck at this is how the cluster will be there, or maybe between them even. So one can, and you dismantle that, you open the top, if the cluster's there, dribble on it. And if it's not there, you lift it up, and you dribble on the one below.
That's why putting the Aprivar makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, but if it's cold, it's going to be useless.
It's cold, it's useless.
Yeah. Or you can wait for a warmer day.
Yeah.
And then that's just for lazy beekeepers.
I don't have anybody extra if you want to stop over.
Yeah, you're between my two apiary sites. So,
That's right.
Yeah.
I
So,
can trap you at the road.
yeah, just say, come do mine. Okay.
Incidentally, I use burlap, as you well know.
Yeah.
Put my house in front of a tree, and then I put burlap stakes, or just metal stakes, and then I wrap it with burlap about this high. And it totally provides a windbreak, again, I can still get into the hive and do my things.
That's very nice. I mean, I do the burlap as well. Some of my, so first of all, from windbreaks, I look at my nuke yards. Okay, if I've got nucleus hives, they are the most important to do windbreaks. Often if you've got a big hive like this, a big production hive, they will survive. Even if it's windy, they will survive. They've got the cluster size. But a nuke, you put in so much extra effort. I'll be feeding those nukes all the way till I can't feed them anymore. So I'll be feeding. And with those ones, I put that burlap, or I'll make a plan. I will rig some system up. I've even made a whole wooden shelter for them and tied it down. And I put insulation boards on the sides. I do everything for my nukes. But these ones over here, the big production hives, yeah, they're fine.
They're like a soccer backstop for kids. You just put burlap on that, and you got it.
Yeah, as long as you have a nice windbreak, they will survive. They will do well.
We use stock via tractor supply.
Yeah.
It's in 14-foot sections. And it literally is about that high.
Yeah.
And self-standing. You could have a 14-foot section, have a snow pole here, snow here, and one in the middle.
then breed those nuts. How much is it?
Oh, no, it's inexpensive. I can't remember, we had it for the goats.
Yeah.
So,
That's what I'd want, yeah, that'd be a good
and then
idea.
she drapes it with plastic, she goes nuts, so.
But you don't lose your bees. You don't lose her. You don't lose them.
Monica just started 3 months ago.
Oh, you poor thing.
Yes, I know.
Configuration is sort of out of sync at the moment. How do you have it now?
I have, the cinder blocks are too high, then I have a slate, and I have 2 pieces of wood to give it the air. I have a deep, I have a medium, I have a deep, I have a queen excluder, and then I have a medium, and then the feeder on top.
Oh my goodness.
So how should you rearrange it for the winter at this point?
Okay, you've got to find the brood, and what I do is the deep that has your brood will go there. One of your supers that's got the most honey will go there. Your next deep that you want will go above where the brood is. The queen will be there, and presumably the queen is just below the queen's brood. That's how it is.
Yes, because I saw the larvae just
So she would be just under the, at the normal height, and take everything else off. So yours must look like that.
So what does she do?
I would probably put it there, just for ease. There might be some brood there, so I will put it there. So that one goes there, and top one goes.
Very top.
There goes. You don't need to store it in the garage or store it somewhere. Yeah. But it's a lot of work. It's heavy.
Yes, it is heavy, and the last time I picked it up, I was like, this has to be 80 pounds.
Yeah. Well, somebody's got an extractor. I won't tell you who's got an extractor. It's really nice. Yeah, it goes well.
And those of you who don't know, everyone knows Jessie, but Jessie is the is the lead of our horticulture committee. She's really our local expert on everything that blooms around this area, and we're so fortunate to have her and Carla working as lead and co-lead of our horticulture team. So last month, Carla ended up just sort of clipping a bunch of things and bringing them, and that was so popular. I said, Jessie, can you just go out and clip a bunch of things and bring them to the meeting? So it's great that she does this every month to share.
So I only know native stuff. I'm sorry. If you ask me a question and it's not native, I'm like, I don't know. If it's invasive, I might know it. But so.
And Jessie, we plant seeds in the spring. I hate to share this, but we plant seeds in the spring. And Jessie's like, what's this seed? And I tried to sneak in some non-native stuff to plant, and she says, I ain't planting this. And she held her ground. She would not plant the seeds that weren't native. So she's very committed to the native plant.
Can we have Japanese not?
Make me have an aneurysm up here.
Japanese not
To Japan, yes, as the name would imply. This place is a really great idea of native plants that are still in bloom. So a lot of the things that I brought from my yard are here also. So you can provide a full year of blooms in your own yard with native plants. There are lots of asters blooming now. Pretty much almost anything that's purple or white, some off pinky colors, are asters. There's lots and lots of them. And some of them started blooming in August, and they'll go until November. So get some asters in there. Goldenrods, the yellows that you're seeing are mostly goldenrods, though there are still some sneezeweed and some black-eyed Susan and some coreopsis that are still blooming. And depending when you put your plants in or how many years you've had them in, some of them will put out babies that will bloom at a longer time or a later time in the year, so you can extend that bloom time. There are grasses that are blooming now, and I've seen bees taking pollen from grasses, even though literature tells you they don't really use anything from it. I've visibly watched honeybees and native bees taking pollen back from these bloomed native grass seed heads. So there's turtlehead that is still blooming. If you're fortunate enough to have the native honeysuckle, which is this coral honeysuckle, this is still putting out blooms. And it has its main biggest bloom in May, when the whole thing will be covered, but from May until now, it will put out sporadic bloom. This way?
Yeah.
Oh, this.
Here you go.
Where? No, I can't. There. And then it has berries. So lots of these, especially vines or shrubs or everybody's favorite pokeberry, though they will bloom at a certain time in the year, sometimes spring, sometimes summer, sometimes fall, the berrying things, especially shrubs that we sold at our plant sale that set berries, also serve that purpose of providing for overwintering birds, for migrating birds, for small mammals throughout winter. So you get the bloom for the bees, you get the seeds and the berries for birds, lots of uses and benefits to the ecosystem, to all the little critters. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's in here that I wanted to point out.
Black-eyed Susan.
What's that?
Black-eyed Susan.
Yep, black-eyed Susan, asters, lots of asters. I'm sorry? There is one bone set that's in here, and there's also snake root, which looks very similar. But they're... Oh, and daisy fleabane. This one's aster. This one is probably bone set, and this one is down here snake root. Oh, and this one. We had this last year at our plant sale. It's mist flower. If anybody got this one from our plant sale.
This side.
It is a prolific reseeder, so you want one plant or 400, get that. It's a beautiful color, still blooming now. So lots of options. But you will have another spring plant sale. If you have any favorite native plants that you would like to see on that list, let me know. Is that an aster? Or is it, oh, it looks like ironweed.
Ironweed. It's really, really good.
Yeah, it looks like ironweed.
I don't know where. Yeah, it looks like ironweed. It's
Yeah.
tall.
And the leaf is a lot like Joe Pye weed.
Does it come up? No, it's on that one.
Yeah, they can.
There, yeah.
Yes, is it possible to get a nutritional value?
I think that's ironweed.
Listening to
Yeah. It's tall, purple. Bees are all over it. Yeah.
The nutritional
I think
value
that's native too,
of,
Keith, so good job.
I was going to bring the Japanese buckwheat.
That would not have gone over well.
do you have a good source for that? Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
He's asking about the nutritional value as being published by Penn State of the plants. I'm not familiar with it. Yeah, see if you can.
There's a few plants left over from the fall plant sale, so if you ordered plants, not many, but there's a few. If you've ordered plants and not picked them up, please let me know, because I need them to find homes in the next week or two. There's no more inventory left, so someone bought plants and haven't picked them up.
Are you talking about the Peter Lintner book?
Yeah, never mind, I just talked to you.
No, yeah.
Good, but not as accurate as you want. That's a big,
Peter lived in this one.
Yeah. Which,
He counts the number of bees on it. So if you did it, the bees would go.
right. Yeah. Which, that's why I'm kind of interested to hear what Penn State has to say also, because sometimes with any study, it depends what they're trying to study and if what they're seeing is actually proving what they're trying to study or not. So I'm fascinated to hear.
Goldenrod, we don't get a flow from goldenrod. Everyone thinks we do, but we don't. So you need a certain elevation, a certain altitude to get goldenrod.
There's so many goldenrods, though. I find that,
The Canadians are.
yeah, there's many goldenrods, so maybe one is better than another, or
I
vice
was
versa,
over
but-
one of the members' house this week looking at a hive, and she basically has taken our whole property and just planted natives. It was beautiful, you know. And yeah, I mean, it's amazing what some people do with their properties to plant for the bees, you know. And it was cool.
Yeah. So if you have any questions, yeah.
Is there an additional value to staghorn besides Laura and I flipping it off the highway to put in our smoker for the bees? Like,
Yeah.
is that
Birds need it for overwintering.
okay?
Yeah, birds eat it, like squirrels, chipmunks, all those little, it's a native plant that provides, it's of high wildlife value, not just staghorn, but any of the sumacs. So yeah, it's definitely worth having on your property.
And that thing grows like crazy. I mean, that thing will grow like 5 or 6 feet in a year. So
Yeah.
if you have a wetland or a stream and you put sumac, you'll have plenty of sumac quickly.
But it tops out at like 15 feet, so it doesn't get super tall, it just gets there quickly. And then it's a colonal plant, so it puts up shoots, and it's one of those you can plant one and have a nice grove in a few years. I
She
love
knows plants.
plants that volunteer readily.
We were visiting our door. Oh,
You make any lemonade out of the staghorn stone?
Yes, I've heard that.
It's just, we'll put this maybe a week, we both steep it, and it's delicious. Jesse, for the new members, maybe just give a brief explanation of why native plants are so important in your chapter.
Well, native plants are important because they serve all of the ecological functions, not just a quick sugar fix in the spring or summer or fall. They provide host resources for caterpillars and moths to turn into butterflies. They have special relationships. Only certain caterpillars can eat certain plants. They can't just eat anything. So if we want to see butterflies and moths, we have to plant the plants that their babies can eat. Like I said, berries, seeds, all of those things that just supply all of the other critters that aren't human in the world. They put down longer tap roots that suck up the moisture that we need to filter our waters before it gets to our streams. They stabilize the soil. They keep it loose for other plants to grow. Lots and lots of benefits. But if you're interested in native plants more, join me at Wild Ones. I have a local chapter. George is going to join me sometime.
Yes.
We have monthly meetings and stuff that talk
Thanks for
strictly
the
about
reminder.
that. There was another question, though.
Yeah, just an observation. We were visiting our daughter in Syracuse, New York, Labor Day weekend. There's goldenrod everywhere. Did you say behind? No.
Yeah.
So we quickly did some research, and here it's promoted by whoever's the agricultural extension agent there, or the farmers actually plant to attract pollinators. So I don't know, that could be native pollinators and not bees, but
Both, yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah. Goldenrod in general is one of those late season plants that we should all try and keep around. But I think the times are changing, that agriculture is trying to get on board with having more active flowering meadows to bring in the pollinators and support those things. So it's good to hear that they are recommending that. You have to be careful sometimes with ag extensions because their purpose is agriculture, and some livestock and things don't agree as well with things like milkweed and stuff. So if you're looking on a Penn State extension, it may say get rid of your milkweed because you have cattle or horses or whatever that can't have milkweed. And in the same token, you want to have milkweed in other areas for monarchs and all of that. So just have to be careful with where you're getting your information. Remembering who's supplying the funds for that information so you can make the best decision. Any other questions? All right.
Thanks.
Oh, Justin, we did bring one other really cool thing. Did you want to?
By the fireplace.
I don't see it. Oh, so it is a praying mantis. So, so there are several kinds of praying mantises. I don't know if we find them on our beehives and around. This is actually not a native praying mantis. I don't know if you'll get to be able to see this. This is a European, would we say narrow-winged? Asian narrow-winged mantis. We were looking up how to tell the difference. So it's a female, and she has an orange dot on her chest, and that's how you can tell the difference that she is an Asian narrow-winged versus the really gigantic Chinese mantis. In here are two of the Chinese mantis uthicas that I found. When I find them, I pull them off of the plants they're on and microwave them so that they can't reproduce. A lot of people think that praying mantises are protected by law as some kind of beneficial predator. They're not. And the non-native praying mantises grow larger and do damage. Don't you dare let her go.
I was like, free her, you know, she's not going to have a happy ending with Jessie.
They do damage. They outcompete. They
Can we auction it off?
Nope.
For a fundraiser?
Here's the most beneficial thing. Once you start calling the non-native, especially the very large Chinese mantis, which also is coming first, then and only then we can start seeing our native Carolina praying mantis. And they're, because the larger non-natives eat them, and they're invasive, so we unfortunately have to call that. But once you do, you'll be amazed.
What you see?
Yeah. It just helps them get back to the equilibrium.
Just a quick question. I see a lot of them eating the bees. The ones with the short wings or the long wings?
Yeah.
Which is the...
It's a great question. So it's a touch tricky. The female native praying mantis, female, has shorter wings than her body. So she looks very tapered in the back. So she's pretty easy to identify. The male native,
The male's going to die anyway, so...
but it'd be nice if he could mate first, right? The male is a little trickier because he doesn't have those shorter wings typically, and so it's mostly by size, and I don't mean to degrade American men, but the male American praying mantis has these goofy looking eyes on the side of his head. Like, he does not look like a killer beast. The Asian and the Chinese and the European male mantises look very deadly and smart. So it's just a funny way to kind of tell the difference between them. And George is looking, isn't it cool how her eyes are dark right now?
Yeah,
Typically when
they
you
change.
see them, yeah, well that's her pupils, they're expanding so she can see better.
Oh.
Because it's kind of darkish in here. Very cool.
Thing likes me.
She's trying to mesmerize you. Yeah.
She's saying, please take me home. Please take me home. Please save me.
She's going home with me. But yeah, so I highly recommend it. It's not easy. Culling the egg sacs is easy. You can pull those off, microwave them. It kills them.
How do you know the difference between the native and the...
For the egg casing?
Yes.
That's a great question. So these, if you can see in here, these guys are puff balls. They're round. They look like kind of brown styrofoam. And you're going to see them on blades of grass or branches. They're easy to tell. Yeah. And these are kind of smaller ones. Usually they're bigger than this. They're like this. The native mantis uthicas are flatter. You'll find them on the underside of flat things like branches. I find them under my my outdoor furniture, the cushions. I've found them under hanging basket, on flat
A dried up
surfaces.
fig.
And they look like they have a zipper down the middle of them, but they're flat. They're not balls. So there are lots and lots of people, unfortunately, because the balance is so out of whack, that only see these and they only see the big, giant Chinese mantises. When our native mantises are smaller and their egg sacs are flatter and harder to see, really. So it was just a little educational piece. We were lucky enough to find her yesterday.
How big are the natives?
The natives are smaller than this, and they top out at about 3.5 inches maybe. The male is bigger than the female. No, I'm sorry, I had that wrong. The female is bigger than the male.
How's that, the male was very small and you could eat?
The head, and that's also, that doesn't happen all the time. That's kind of a myth that's been blown out of proportion. It does happen sometimes. The cannibalism part really comes in when they hatch out of their ootheca. If they can't go to get a food source pretty quickly, the little tiny baby nymphs will eat each other. So that's more where the cannibalism comes in than with the mating.
I'm exercising her so she can run fast from you.
I'm not sure.
Not gonna make it. What?
I'm not sure I've ever seen a native, but I want to see the big round balls,
Yeah.
and I think that's really great and they're good for me, but
And they're not. So they, there are people that are now saying, oh, but they eat spotted lanternflies. While they might eat 1 or 2 spotted lanternflies, they're not eating the millions that we would need them to eat, and they're also eating a disproportionate amount of native bees, native butterflies, native hummingbirds, some of them. Like, they're doing a disproportionate amount of damage
wow.
compared to the little bit of culling of spotted lanternfly that they might do. Yeah. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I was inspecting a nuke the other day, homemade nuke outer cover, and I'll be damned, a native mantis laid her egg sac right in the gap of the nuke inner cover. So that can happen. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
The nuke had full of bees.
I'm just kidding.
I got my eye on it. I know.
Or they were getting eaten.
No, it's a great. It's so fun to do the raffle. I'm sorry that it was missing for a couple months there, and it's good to have it back. And anyway, it's all good. And thanks Stephanie and Pat again for the snacks and doing that. You know, I mean, it's really cool. So in the last 30 minutes or 20 or 30 minutes, we're going to do show and tell. I don't know if anyone brought anything or has questions. Justin, come on up. Justin was quick to raise his hand.
All right, well, this is called a Klaus Hive Dome, and they market it as a observation tool. You know, you can bring people to your bee yard and open up a hive and show them some bees going on, but they're not really going to see much, right? Because you're just looking at the top of frames. But if anybody's ever sat in any of Dr. Tom Seeley's talks, especially about Darwinian beekeeping and sort of more of a natural beekeeping of how bees exist in the outdoors, he is a big proponent of smaller hives with no upper ventilation, because his theory is in a tree cavity, the bees need that humidity and moisture as their water source, because they need to use water to dilute honey to be able to eat it. They don't eat honey raw, they have to dilute it with water. And I've asked this over the years, and I never got an answer. How can we tell if our colonies die from dying of thirst? I mean, we know moisture, if it condenses and rains on the bees, it can kill them as well. But there could be the opposite end of that as well, where maybe they're dying from lack of moisture. And when you find dead outs and they have food, maybe it's not only because it was too cold for them to move over, but maybe they also didn't have adequate water supply to possibly eat the honey. Maybe. It's just a theory. But this winter, I'm going to test this out by not providing an upper entrance to one of my colonies. And what's neat about the dome is, if anything does condense up here, right, it's going to run down the sides and down the walls of the hive, not on the bees. It'll be an easy way to check. You know, you just lift the lid up, you can check and just see where the cluster's at. We talked about winterizing. We didn't really talk about emergency food over the winter, but one thing new people realize, you don't put your emergency food on until usually December or later. If you put your emergency food on too soon, like before Thanksgiving, around Thanksgiving, and I've talked with our Inspector Jeff about this, he agrees, you'll move your cluster up too fast to the easy candy food, and they might bypass some stores, and they will not move back down to get food underneath them because everything below them is more cold. So I think this will be a neat experiment. Now, one of the things you have to
So you're going to put this right above your upper box?
Yep.
In the winter?
Right over the frames. And
Right over the frames.
I'm going to put a medium over it. I thought a shallow would fit, but a shallow is not tall enough. So you do need another medium.
And then, of course,
And then
an
your-
inch or two of insulation, and maybe even I'll pack just a blanket in here or something just to help keep it warmer. But when you don't provide an upper vent, one of the things you have to take into consideration is they're going to have to get out to go to the bathroom sometime. So you might want to make your lower entrance reducer bigger. And I'm also going to put I use some flashing material to create a porch, so that snow can't block up that lower entrance. So the dead bees could block up your lower entrance, snow could block up your lower entrance, and the bees can't get out and do cleansing flights. So that's something you have to plan for if you're going to be experimenting with no upper ventilation or no upper exit. I know several beekeepers. A guy I'm familiar with from the Monco group, Mike Auckland, he joined the CCBA this year or last year, and I think on all of his colonies, he does not provide an upper vent or upper entrance at all during the winter, and he's very successful with beekeeping and has no problems. So if you wanted to talk to somebody who routinely does that, Mike Auckland, he's on the CCBA forum. You can pick his brain if you want, or maybe I'll ask him to make a posting and sharing how he does not provide upper ventilation, and it works out very well for him. So he's a good resource that's been doing that for years. So
It's kind of fun too, right? You can kind of see what's going on.
Yeah, now it'll be a little bit of a pain. If I need to add some candy, I can't put a candy board on it. Obviously, I'll have to make candy blocks or fondant. And I'm sure, taking this apart and breaking off the propolis seal will really agitate them. But, it shouldn't be too difficult to lift it up and, set a piece of candy in there and set it back down. And, you're not fully opening the hive, so that, I guess it all depends how much they'll propolize it out. I haven't used it yet. I can't speak from experience, but I think that's kind of neat. And it was only, $12, I think?
It's a cool thing. Man Lake, right? Man Lake.
Yeah, so now I just need to decide if I want to put it on one of my single deeps, my single 10-frame deeps, or one of my double 10-frame deeps.
So this is my answer to a solar melter. That's the word I was looking for, melter. So I basically just got a black box from Home Depot. I got a turkey tray. I put a couple of holes here at the bottom. I put a little frame in there to keep the thing in place. And I put a little plastic box in the bottom so that there's a place to collect the wax. On a nice sunny day, even when it's cool out, it will melt this wax and fill that container up. So how do you collect wax? This is one way. Melt it down, works fine. Leave it outside, fill it up, and what do I put on top? Oh yeah, you got to have a piece of glass, because if you don't have a piece of glass in there, then the bees and other critters will be in there collecting everything they can find, because there's wax and honey and propolis and everything else that's in there. So I just put a couple of screws on it so that when I put it in place, I can also put it on a tilt and it doesn't slide off. I learned that one the hard way. I walked by it and touch it and it slid right off. And I come out a couple days later and it's full of water because it rained. Yeah. So that's the beauty of the piece of glass.
I put a solar wax melter in my home apiary this year, so it actually kind of cool because all that extra burr comb that you scrape and stuff, and I just throw it right into the solar wax melter, and it's amazing how much clean wax you'll get at the end of the month from just putting that extra wax in there. Yeah.
So
cool. And that's a nice, easy, cheap way to make one. Cheap.
Exactly. So I didn't realize how useful this would be for some folks, but I use just an induction stove top, a new wave. I can use a cut-off coffee can, and it will actually melt the wax right here at whatever temperature you want to set it to. Some of the devices you get give you a temperature that is either uneven or is too high or too low. It might take hours or it may never melt, but you can set the temperature to 130 degrees or 140 degrees and it will melt it right down. And in this particular case, I had I poured water into the wax to help
separate the honey and other crud from the actual wax. But yeah, this works really great. Go to Goodwill or to a yard sale and pick up a cheap pan that sticks with a magnet. You can't use an aluminum pan. You can't use a high carbon pan. You just have to use something that's got a lot of magnetic properties to it.
Mark, that would help that the surface doesn't get hot.
Oh yeah, as soon as you pull it off, you can basically put your hand right on it. Now the container will be a little warm, like 150 degrees or whatever temperature you've got it set to. So, can you go to camera 1, please? Push 1. Push 2 then. Okay. All right.
Anybody else got anything to share?
I forgot to share one more tool. This little tool I added to, I have on me all the time when I'm in a hive anymore. It's just a little pair of tweezers. Cheap, flat, blunt end tweezers. It's always in my pocket. Because you know when you see the small hive beetles in your frames, you want to get them but you can't, and you don't want to ruin your comb? I love this thing. You're looking at your frame, you see the small hive beetle hiding in the cell, you just go down the wall, grab the small hive beetle, pull it out, yeah, you take the cell wall with it, smash it, wipe it on your pants, there you go. I mean, everybody has small hive beetles, but you know, you're not going to destroy, use your hive tool to get at them in the comb. So keep a little pair of tweezers on you, it's great, and also leave the propolis on the top of the end bars. They make little propolis jails that they'll corral all the small hive beetles in. So don't keep your top bar ends that clean because they need that propolis also. But a little pair of tweezers really helps with your small hive beetles.
Cool. Small. Well,
It's not that pointy.
I think that's it for today. So, thank you all for coming. And we'll probably, my suspicion is we'll be outside again in November. So, see you then.